is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Fullmetal Alchemist, Brotherhood, Episode 62, A Fierce Counterattack. In this episode, Al decides that Ed needs his arm back badly enough that he sacrifices himself to get it back, which really does not feel like an equal exchange. I gotta admit. It's just, Al, I love you, man, and I get it, and I'm proud of you in like a way, but also, what are you doing? Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. All right, so I'm going to start from the beginning here, right out of the gate, even though sometimes I will begin to talk about a thing, but I don't want to do that this time because I feel like everything sort of has to go in the order it happens to be talked about correctly. Does that make sense? So we start off with the reminder of how these Briggs soldiers were being made into Philosopher's Stones. He's like doing the pulling into his hand that he did with the other two. And all of these guys begin like grabbing at their throats and going to their knees. And all of a sudden, Hohenheim says, I am not going to let you do this anymore. And we see him standing there, quickly flanked by Al and May and Izumi. And he essentially like puts himself very much in the beam of what Father is about to do. So he first says something about how you think that human beings are inferior, but you need human beings to create a Philosopher's Stone. And a Philosopher's Stone makes a homunculus. So you need human beings to make the thing that you allege is actually superior. You've reached a dead end. What are homunculi? What are you doing? And then Father says, I can create humans for you. And we get like greed times 50, times 1,000, times 1,000,000. Because he lifts his arms and these people, full people, just step out of his torso. We've got King Xerxes, and he says, I found a way. Did you see? I am immortal. I'm still alive. It worked. Which truly, I cannot tell if that's actually Xerxes saying that or if this is something that, like, Father is controlling somehow. But I have to be perfectly honest. I think it's actually Xerxes, and he's just that bad at knowing what is good and bad. That's all I can, like, how are you going to be like, see, I'm still alive? So I really showed you. Are you, though? I don't feel like that's what you are. But if you want to say that and it makes you feel better, I suppose, sure. I'm not going to try and argue the semantics of it with you. And there are a bunch of people that wind up like, at one point, Izumi looks down and it's a tiny baby that is grabbing her foot. And I was really curious about this because the baby has blonde hair. So, you know, and her and Sig, neither of them have blonde hair. So I sort of was thinking like, initially I was like, oh, that's supposed to be her kid. And then I was like, well, maybe it's not. And maybe it's just a baby in like a random baby, and it happens to be going up to Izumi, or was targeting Izumi because of it being like the thing that would upset her the most. I don't know. And all of these kids are going up to Al and saying, a body, I have a body again. So it feels like maybe what Father has managed to do is target these guys in the direction of whomever is going to be the most upset by whatever it is they're saying or feeling. Like, right? Okay, Damien says, yeah, Father was intentionally screwing with them. Okay, so these aren't, like, for example, King Xerxes. Damien, do you mean, and you, I don't know if this is like even a definitive thing that's been said, is that Father creating a weird version of King Xerxes to just be like, or is that actually Xerxes, his soul, I guess? I really hope that it's actually just Father fucking with them. I was prepared to think that it's Xerxes, but I would rather it wasn't, if we're being honest. So at this point, Ed comes up like behind Hohenheim in a sort of way that he's like looking at the entire horrific scene in front of him. And as he does, Father sort of smirks, and then this like really bright white light shoots out from his chest. And it's a weird moment because it goes through the walls, it destroys some things, and I was not clear what was happening here. And it's obviously like there are people in another room that are feeling it. At one point, Greed looks up and sees like mortar falling from the ceiling, and it's just like, God damn it. And Greed he's like, we need anybody who can still fight. I want to go out there and, you know, deal with this fucking creature we've got on our hands now. And he says, the fat frog man and the two women, get down, you're injured. And I love General Armstrong. It's just like, yeah, no, absolutely not. And Greed says this is no time for a pissing order, or a pissing contest over who's in charge. I was like, wow, they could just say pissing order in this show. But then there is a message from headquarters, and they are telling her it's the General Command Center. Half of it has been blown up, and we get to see this like crater that was left there. And he says, we can't contact the North Gate. And Greed's then like, yeah, you see? I get why you guys think that you can like go up against him. But he's not a fucking regular person. He's powered by thousands of Philosopher Stones, basically. And then he explains to them about how he ate God. And the thing about this God power is that I had thought, so what is happening here is basically he doesn't have the right number of Philosopher's Stones to hold God's power. He has it, and he is able to use it, but it's like wearing away at him because it's just kind of a matter of time before it's going to be too much for him, right? I hope I'm not misinterpreting this. So he's down here like, he is, what it is that Hohenheim eventually says to do is kind of what he said before, which is wear him down and make it so that he has to use Philosopher's Stones until he doesn't have any power left. And I don't know if it's supposed to be that, like, if you get him down enough Philosopher's Stones, then he has to release God's power because that'll just take him right over the edge of like the balance that he has managed to sustain this thus far. I'm just trying to make sure I get this. But anyway, Greed is like, see, this is what I'm saying. All of the ordinary people should leave because this is not an ordinary guy. And General Armstrong is like, look, man, my men are still out there. I'm not just going to leave and let them all keep fighting this guy. And then Carly, which is the name of the man who's been talking to General Armstrong, he like can hear because they just put the phone down, I guess. And he is like, hey, you don't need to worry about us. We're fucking Briggs, man. We're going to keep doing what we do. And you don't need to, sacrifice yourself. From what I hear, you've been injured. Stay and wait where you are. And I really love, she says, listen up, Alex. Take the radio with you. Win at any cost. And the look that he gives her, he is so touched. I mean, she is a real mixed bag, that one. She's like a character that I really like in some ways, but she has such like messed up priorities, and I want her to like grow. And then she could be really great. But I'm not really sure that she's entirely learned the lesson that I want here, which is to say just always following orders isn't the thing. Like she went up against her government here, so I suppose, but it's just wild that she's doing that and she was still giving him attitude for doing the same thing earlier on. He had a better sense of where to draw the line than her. And she maybe is just feeling guilty that he called it before she did. So at this point, Roy is like, all right, let's go, Hawkeye. And Greed is like, man, you can't see. What are you going to do up there? And Roy says, I'm going to burn this fucking stone out of him. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to need her to direct me and help me. So get used to that. And Lanfan is also like, yeah, and it's my job to help protect the young lord. So I'll be coming. And I just really enjoy all of these, like, Greed really thought that he was going to be able to say what was going to happen here and step in and just take charge. And to a degree, they're going to listen to him. But mostly, they're going to do what the fuck they want. So we have him ascending, and they leave behind the, like, weird kind of frog goblin man. He's not a goblin, but he kind of looks like a goblin a little bit. So that's what I keep thinking of him as. So they leave behind like him, Scar. Fair. Scar was very badly injured. We've got that like weird general the older man with the glasses who kept trying to insist that what they were doing was actually granting immortality because he's an idiot. We've got some other Briggs guys who are, I guess, just also bailing. They don't look injured, but I guess they just are regular people. And that's part of what Greed is saying is stay here. Sig gets left behind, which did surprise me because he is so strong. He was able to be a significant help in fighting Sloth. So I kind of don't think of him as a regular person, but he is. And then, of course, General Armstrong, who is left behind as well. And she spots the Führer and walks over to him. And she says, so this is where you met your end, and it was you that killed him? And Scar says when he arrived, he was already badly injured. If it hadn't been for those wounds, I might have lost. And there is something about how Scar is immediately going, yeah, no, look, I did kill him, but I mean, Like, he's trying to not take full credit. And there is something that I really admire about that, because just being the guy who took him down, even if he was injured, is already super impressive. Don't with the modesty, man. Just go ahead and take the credit. It's fine. You still were able to affect this man, and that is very difficult by yourself. His injury was sustained as like a series of events that were calculated down to the fraction of a second to get the drop on him, because he was so hard to even get a scratch on. So there's this interesting moment where General Armstrong is thinking about this guy saying, Buccaneer was working with soldiers from Shing. He inflicted a mortal wound on Bradley. And I don't know why we got this flashback of her remembering this moment. It felt like it was supposed to be more meaningful to me than... Is it just that she's realizing that Buccaneer is the one that put Scar in the position to win? I guess that's it. Like, it's supposed to be sort of her honoring Briggs. I was going to correct myself and say Buccaneer, but like Briggs too, I guess. Yeah, because then it follows up with her saying Briggs men are as tough as they come. Okay, so she's just basically like, yeah, my friend fucking did this. He half killed you. Which I think is probably overstating it, but nevertheless. So we go back to the location of this huge blast that like hollowed out half of the building. And May is asleep. I put in quotes. She is unconscious and her little panda is poking at her face. And I had a moment of just like, oh shit, what happened? Because I had lost track of what was going on. And then we see that she is being guarded by Al, who is at one knee in front of her and just like in a state where if he were not made of metal, I mean, he almost got here. There's a real sense of, oh my God, because his front torso is burned away, which very nearly was the blood sigil, which very nearly killed him. And I have said so many times about how uncomfortable those blood sigils make me, like how delicate they seem to be to me. And despite feeling that way, I kind of forgot about how he's powered and the way that those function. So being reminded here of how incredibly easy it would be, really. Al feels indestructible, but he's not actually. He's quite destructible. It would be like you can kill somebody really easy. You just have to get them in the right spot, in the head, in the heart. It's the exact same thing. He's kind of just as vulnerable in a way. So anyway, she sees that and recognizes like just how close he fucking came. And it takes a minute for him to seem to come back to himself, because there's no light in his eyes when she first calls his name, and it like very gradually comes back. And this is when she says to Al, your body, like what's going on? And he just falls forward. I really thought that he was going to be okay, but just it came close. And that collapse caught me totally off guard. That was when I was like, okay, something has really turned a corner here. We go to Ed, and his arm has some pieces missing off, like the plating. And as we see later, it matters. That shit breaks apart, no problem. Basically, everybody is slowly coming to in this scene. And then we see that it was Hohenheim who is standing in front of them, protecting them from this blast. And it's a very Christ-like sort of moment, because he's got his arms outspread. And this is one of those things that, like, I don't know that they were doing a Christ parallel exactly. It feels like probably they were, but the arms outspread thing is unfortunately always going to look very Christ-like, whether you intend it to look that way or not. So I'm just going to take it that way. And this dude is covered in little fractures in the way that people are when they begin to break apart because of, alchemy. So it's obvious that he sustained some damage here. And he's sort of frozen in place. And Ed runs up to him and is talking to him, and then suddenly looks up and he sees Father standing behind him over his shoulder. And he begins to make a Philosopher's Stone out of all of them. He begins to pull their life force out. And all of a sudden, he goes flying. And there is a Briggs sniper who has shot him in the side of the head. A damn good shot. Truly, I had a moment of like, did that kill him? Did he just get killed by a sniper from Briggs? Because that is a weirdly undramatic way to die, but it would also be kind of fucking great if that was how he died. I would not be mad at all. I really wouldn't. And then we see them firing bazookas and rockets and all of this, like, all I could think throughout this scene was how they're going to destroy the building that they themselves are in with these attacks, and they're not doing any good. And I think maybe they were doing good. I think he is having to use his Philosopher's Stone in order to remain totally undamaged. But in the moments that it's happening, it appears like it's not costing him any effort at all. And the Briggs guys are talking with one another and just saying like, hey, he hasn't taken any damage, man. He isn't even sweating. There's no blood or cuts. There's nothing. And then we see a finger snap. And all of a sudden, this gout of flame that goes flying. And there is Roy, backed by Hawkeye and Alex. And I know that we have seen Roy using his ability, but honestly, I think this was the biggest attack we've ever seen from him. And I may be wrong about that, but the distance between him and Father here is quite substantial. And it's really fun because he is getting like degree instructions from Hawkeye, basically telling him like which direction to shoot. 53 degrees is the one she says here, and then attack coming from straight ahead, and he uses his alchemy to make a wall in front of them so they're protected, because essentially Father catches the fire that Roy threw at him and just chucks it back, which really does not seem fair, but there it is. We get Alex creating a bunch of projectiles. We get Lanfan flying into the air, chucking what looks like a small bomb. We get Gorilla Man throwing a giant boulder. We get that other man who's kind of got a porcupine thing going on where he shoots quills out of his back. And at this point, finally, all of this light is beginning to crackle around Father, because now they're actually beginning to wear away at him. It's finally starting to happen. And then we go up to Greed, and we have this really interesting moment where he's like, if I had all of this power, think what I could do. And he's watching this like assault on this man that doesn't really seem to be doing all that much, and feeling very like, yeah, gimme. And inside of him, Ling is like, you keep saying that you like want the world, but is this really what you meant? And Greed says, yeah. Once I've got this kind of power, everything will be mine. And he says, who knows? Maybe it'll fill the emptiness inside me. An achievement like that could finally quench the thirst I've been living with since the day I was born. And Ling basically is like, you dumb bitch. No, it won't. God, you're a fucking child. Grow up, idiot. Grow up. And what we see later is that Greed, like, wants friends. And I enjoy that a great deal. We shall get there. But this moment where he essentially just tells Greed, ugh, you're dumb, was really, really funny to me. And Greed says, keep quiet, you little pest. I am Greed the Avaricious. I want everything. And I was like, yeah, feels like posturing though. So we have Izumi creating a half onion around Father so that Roy can then throw his flame and it gets caught in this cup and redirects it back on him. He's basically in like a giant oven. Roy really thinks, all right, now I got him. No, still no. They're unloading absolutely all of their ammunition to the point that they are running out. It's also not doing it. Granted, again, there is red light flickering now. So he's putting in effort. And then Greed comes out of nowhere and punches him right square between the eyes. And all of a sudden, his fist has disappeared into Father's head. And Father says, oh, nice. I'm so glad you turned up because I really do need another Philosopher's Stone. Perfect. I'll be taking yours. And you see these veins go up his arm, the red, and Greed begins screaming. And then all of a sudden, he stops and says, good acting, right? You can't take my stone from me without dropping your own barrier, you idiot. So, I bet you never thought those powers could get taken away, did you? But guess what? You were wrong, and they're going to be mine. And he begins to pull. It does not go the way he thought it was going to go. Ed actually jumps in to try and save Greed. He, and they defend against him, of course. And then we get the wildest fight scene where then Alex jumps in and Izumi jumps in and Father is defending against them all with Greed attached to the front of his head. And it is the weirdest looking thing I have ever seen. It is just so strange looking. And eventually Father uses this huge blast and he causes all of them to fly outward away from him. And this is when Ed's arm completely detaches and just bursts into a million pieces. And it did not even occur to me how if he doesn't have both hands, he can't do his alchemy the way he normally does. I forgot that would be a thing. So they're continuing this fight despite getting blasted away. And Ed goes in for an attack with a kick. And at first, it looks like Father just defends against the kick with his arm, throws Ed away, and it was nothing. But then you see these streamers of black dust kind of pouring out of his head. It's coming out of his eyes and his ears, I think. At one point his mouth opens and you see the eyeball inside of his mouth, which is truly something. And then he goes down on all fours in this really creepy sort of animalistic way. The animation of how Father looks pretty much from here on is really, really creepy. He's just so unsettling. And it's wild to me how just last episode I was like, ooh, God, it looks good on you. Damn. And then they just have to change a few things in a few small ways. And I'm suddenly like, oh God, don't make me look at this. So he slams his hands down. He does this sort of blast again. He keeps doing these giant pushes on everybody. And then the smoke clears, and there's like this small crater basically in the center of the courtyard. But he is still on his hands and knees, and there is still dust pouring out of his mouth. He didn't just like do this and then move on. This took a toll on him for sure. And as he begins to look around, he starts yelling, "A philosopher's stone. I need a philosopher's stone." It's really clear that shit, it is almost the end for him. And we see Ed stuck in one spot because a piece of rebar has pierced his arm, and he doesn't have his other arm to do any alchemy to protect himself. And this is when we get this awful moment. Al is watching this, and he can't move. He's like up, sort of propping himself on his hands, but he can't do anything to help. And then he says to May, "I need your help." He sacrificed his arm and leg to get my soul back. Or I guess his arm, because the leg was for a different thing. So maybe the reverse is something that's possible. And May is like, what are you asking me to do? And she's like, I don't, you know what you're saying, right? And Al is like, "You're the only one who can help me do this, man. You gotta help me, please." So then we go to Father, who is like walking really slowly towards Ed here with one hand out in this sort of almost zombie-like way. All he can see is the potential for a philosopher's stone here. It is not like, this is not the Father that we have come to know. He feels like there's barely anything here. And he says to Ed, "You vile human, give it to me." And I love this energy of him being like, "You bastard, you're keeping it from me," like it's a personal thing. All of a sudden, all of these knives come flying out to create a circle right next to Ed. And he looks over as he realizes and sees Al clapping his hands together and May crying. And he's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing, Al?" And then we see Al's sigil light up, and the light is going out of the eyes of the suit of armor. And all of a sudden, Al's here again in the same room as his body. And his body says, "Are you ready?" And he says, "Now we put all our faith in Brother." And they reach out and hold hands, and Al's like suit of armor self begins to disappear. So it looks like his soul, which was signified from the suit of armor, is back in his body. But the body, I don't know if it has a way to go back. Like, how does that happen? And we see Truth sitting there. And he says, "Oh, so your soul got back." But then says, "Will he be coming back for you?" I was a little bit confused by the way this was worded. Your soul has entered you, but will he be coming back for you? So is he saying, like, Ed has to reopen a portal and come pull him back into the real world? I kind of had expected, I'll be honest with you guys, that just Al reconnecting with his body would just pull his body back into the real world. It didn't occur to me that even if they reunited, he would be stuck still. And that really sucks. That doesn't seem fair. I don't know. But, and he begins to, like, so Truth says, I can't wait to see what he'll be sacrificing. And as he says it, the one arm that he had, that he took from Ed, begins to break apart and float away. And then we go to Ed looking at his arm, which has returned to his body as he realizes what his brother did. I do like the detail, too, that his, like, nails are weirdly long, because I guess Truth just doesn't care about manicures and didn't manage that shit very well. So when Ed realizes what Al did, he goes pretty much apeshit. Pretty much apeshit. It is actually a boss fight. This is really good. He smashes father across the courtyard. He yanks that rebar out of his arm, and he begins to straight up assault this man with alchemy in an unhinged manner. He, like, chucks blades at him, and this man's head is breaking apart with light pouring out in a really kind of, like, gruesome way. And I enjoy so much how everybody on the sidelines is just like, holy shit, Ed, yes, yes, my man, look at this. Oh, that is so rad. Get him, get him. And just the whole energy of everybody being like, first, we're going to take a minute and we're going to appreciate what the fuck he's doing right now, because he's going ham. And then we are going to gather our shit together and also begin to attack. April says that he is Ed. Ed has to figure out how to get Al's soul and body back. Okay, so that is what I thought. That's just really not fair. Like, come on, man. Give him this. He got his body. Just let him go. I know that's not how it works. Okay, I'm going to say what I am hoping. I want Hohenheim to sacrifice himself to get Al back. No offense, Hohenheim, but, like, I don't like you. And if you're going to do something to, like, make up for shit. I mean, that said, Hohenheim is so full of souls. He's, like, packed that he probably wouldn't have to sacrifice himself, would he? He might just, like, need to sacrifice one of the souls that he's got in him. The ideal would be to sacrifice father to get Al back, but I am not entirely sure how they are going to, you know, would make that happen, considering the uncertainty of killing him to begin with. Like, I feel like they just kind of have to go nuts on him and hope at some point he will die. It's not easy enough. Like, with a person making a Philosopher's Stone with no transmutation circle, you're taking the one soul from that one person. I don't know how they target that with something like Father, if it's the same or not, like, you know. And even if they use him, Ed would still have to sacrifice something, because that's just sort of how it works. What else? What would he sacrifice to get his brother back? His other leg? Give his arm back? You don't really get a choice in some cases. He said, take my arm, and they took the arm. But that feels kind of like it was just a spur of the moment kind of thing. Roy didn't get to choose to give up his sight. That's just what got taken. I'm very curious. Damien says his arm is also thinner than the other one, and there's metal pieces sticking in his shoulder because he still has the automail base attached to his shoulder when his arm was returned. Ooh, I didn't notice that. How weird. Can you imagine? You just have been functioning without an arm for years and years, and then suddenly your arm is just back. Like, it's not even like, I got a replacement arm somehow. It's your arm, your original arm. Wild. Let's see. Max says, didn't Hohenheim say he could get their bodies back just by using himself as a philosopher's stone? Yeah. And Ed was like, I won't do that because those are still people's souls, right? Basically, Ed was the obstacle there, where he just objects ethically to the concept of using Hohenheim, but Hohenheim could still sacrifice himself, and Ed doesn't get a say, and maybe that could work, which I would be perfectly fine with. I also still don't really get the deal with Truth, and we've only got 2 episodes left, and I can't tell still if Truth and the dwarf in the jar are even the same thing. I've been assuming that they are this whole time because of the teeth and the eye. But the more I sort of like watch, the more I'm not certain that's the case. I don't know. So anyway, everybody's on the sidelines and they're all cheering for him. And I love Greed and this moment of him just standing back and watching all of this. And this is when Ling says, this is what you wanted. This is it. And we have everybody one by one cheering for Ed. And then we go back to Greed and he says, yeah, you're right. This is what I wanted. To have friends like this. And I really like this. You know, it's not perfectly done. It feels kind of, it's being said in such bold terms. And I feel like there could be more nuance here, but I really don't mind that. And it's funny that it didn't occur to me really, because we had the whole thing with like what the whole like envy was, and then Wrath being like angry that he couldn't figure human beings out and that they weren't as predictable. And the only one that we really haven't gotten to see much more insight is Sloth. Sloth just seems kind of like he is what he is. But it didn't occur to me, despite having a bit more insight into all of those guys, that there would be something more to Greed. And I don't know why, because it's very clear Greed is being sort of set up for a redemption of a kind here. But I really like the idea that Greed has just been... There has always been a sense of power to his avarice. Like he is choosing to go after shit. And him saying maybe this will finally do it, will fill the emptiness. It now gives all of his desire a desperation, like that edge to it, that kind of takes the dignity out of it and makes it sad. And I think that's pretty compelling. I really like that, because that is so often what Greed is about, is this idea that like, if I get enough of whatever, I will finally be done. I will finally feel safe. I will finally have enough power. I will finally, whatever that sort of weird goal is in your mind, it doesn't have to be necessarily money. It, you know, just there is this weird sort of horizon that you imagine will be when you're satisfied and happy. And that if you keep getting enough of the thing, that you will finally feel like you're done. And it's really tricky, guys, because it pops up in such different ways for all of us. And some of it's like pure emotional, you know? So you have this like greed for love, and you let yourself be taken advantage of because you really feel like if I finally find the right relationship, then I won't have anything more to worry about because I will have achieved true love. And as we all know, that's the end of the story whenever that happens. Things can seem either innocuous or like actually healthy to pursue, but it's always because we're trying to find something very specific. And if you follow that question, it's sort of the same as the question where you ask yourself what you're afraid of. You know, in a given situation where there's something that you're supposed to do and you know it would be good for you and you aren't doing it, and there's sort of probably a fear behind it, and you pursue and say, what am I afraid of here? Am I afraid I can't do it? Am I afraid that if I do it, I'll lose something else? And if you do that with sort of desire, what am I after here? For me, it's like I am always looking for comfort. And that can be physical comfort or it can be like emotional comfort. So that is food. That is like cozy blankets. The number of blankets I own, you guys, you don't even know. The numbers of fuzzy socks, the numbers of pairs of pajamas, like that is a thing. And just overall, like trying to find that sense of comfort and safety that you had as a child. That's the thing I'm always pursuing, because feeling safe when you just grew up without enough around you, it feels like if I just accumulate, because I wasn't able to because we didn't have the money when I was a kid, but now I have some money, maybe I can do it now. And you fool yourself into thinking that you can buy your way to feeling stable, to feeling like you're finally safe. And for some people, it's wanting to get away. I'm wanting to find a way to settle in, and some people want to get out. And that's the thing. And that can look like a completely different animal. So just the whole idea of what greed is and the bigger motivation behind that, I really enjoy. And I kind of wish that we got like more of it. You know, like I keep saying, there's only 2 episodes left. So there is certainly stuff that I'm sort of wanting to pursue that probably won't be, because that's what, another 40 minutes? Actually, that brings up a good question. Is the finale the same length as the rest of the show? Or is it a like extra long episode? I haven't looked into it, but I just, I really did like this, and it's making me think maybe greed and Ling can find a way to coexist somehow. And I especially like the whole concept of Ling learning how to manage greed and embracing him because it does suit him and he recognizes that desire, but he also has a really strong will and ethic that keeps it in check. And this is honestly giving me such Lyndon from Cradle vibes, and it's making me think that this is like a major source of inspiration for Will White, probably, because there's a lot of having a strong will that overpowers other urges, and it keeps making me think of that. So anyway, just wanted to say that. Pretty sure it's the same length. Okay. So yeah, we got another 40 minutes to wrap up this insane story. That's crazy. So we go then to Ed and Father leaping through the air toward one another. And Father has the same sort of like poise and whatnot as Ed as he's flying through the air. So I was like, oh, this is really going to be a punching each other kind of thing. No, Ed lands his punch right smack in his face, and Father doesn't even get a hit in at all. He just goes fucking flying. And Ed is left standing over him. And he says, "Get up, you novice," is what he calls him. Which I'm not sure where novice is coming from, unless it's supposed to be you're not used to trying to work with like ordinary levels of power. So you are out of your element. But then follows up with, you're about to learn how outclassed you are. And then it just fucking slams to the end credits. I was not ready for it to just end there. These episodes keep ending so abruptly. And I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, there? Really? So, yeah, it was just such a weird, this fight between the two of them and it being so fueled by Ed's rage at Al sacrificing himself the way that he did. It's a really good idea. I really liked it. And I believe he will be able to get Al back. I am going to go out on a limb here and predict like an overall happy ending here. That is not to say I think nobody else is going to die. And when I say that, I don't mean like Hohenheim, because I don't count him because I'd rather he was gone. But I'm talking about like any of our other OGs who are out here. You know, I am not going to say I think they're all totally safe. But I don't think Roy is going to die. I really hope Hawkeye doesn't die, because like that's kind of a thing that gets done, you know. If Alex dies, forget it. That'll be it for me. I'm never going to talk about the show again. That's just that on that. So just get ready. Trying to think who else is up there. Izumi. I really do like Izumi. If Izumi died, even though I like her, the main reason that I would be super bummed is on Sig's behalf, because he would be so crushed, because I love him. But he went below. We've got General Armstrong, who is still below, and Scar is below. Yeah, the only one that I could think if they died, it would suck, but I wouldn't be that mad, is May. And that would just be mean-spirited at this point, to have like everybody but the child make it. I don't love what they did with May's character, as you all know, but that doesn't mean that I want this little girl dead. So I'm thinking that most of our people are going to get out of it, but I'm not positive. I don't know. I also am very curious what all is going on in the, like, for example, where Winry and Pinnacle are. Everybody just had this mass passing out. I don't know if they like are conscious of anything that happened while they were out of their bodies, but it doesn't seem like they have any memory of anything. How is everybody coping with that? Like, what are people saying happened? Does she know exactly what it was? I'm assuming Winry is aware what that was, likely. And I can't recall how much Pinnacle knows about what is about to happen, because it doesn't seem like Ed and Al and Winry were trying to keep this secret from Pinnacle. So I'm going to assume that she's aware. But as far as like the other random dudes who were, I don't even know who those guys were. They were like guarding them or something, actually. Now that I think about it, I don't know who they were. But those dudes, how much do they know about any of it? Is this the kind of thing that's going to be publicized? And the whole world is going to find out the Fuhrer was a fucking homunculus and this was all... Or are they going to try and cover it up? And are we even going to see that? Because there's only 2 episodes left. So, like, I don't know if we'll get that information. But this is the sort of thing that always, like, what are we going to do? Are we going to let them know that the entire government was, like, founded by an otherworldly creature that was seeking to eat God? Is that what we're going to do? Or are we going to keep that shit to ourselves? Because that sounds totally out there, you know? Max says, don't think I'll be able to make it to the last 2 episodes. How'd you like the series overall? As long as you rank it above Doctor Who, I'll call it a win. I really liked it. I definitely liked it better than Doctor Who. This is such an interesting question, actually. Like, when you say rank, I don't know how to do that, but I would give this series like an 8 out of 10. Like, that's pretty high for me. there are very few series that I would give like a 10 out of 10. Like the only series that I feel like 10 out of 10 is Fleabag. Deadwood would be a 9 out of 10. So I feel like 8 out of 10 is quite respectable. And especially considering that I didn't know at all what I was getting into, I am really pleasantly surprised at how complex the story is. And because I really did not know what to expect at all. You guys have no idea how little exposure I have had to anything about this show. The only thing that I had ever seen were the memes about the little chimera and the little girl. Like, that was it, and I didn't have context for it, so I didn't know what it was. And I'm really impressed with how, like, intricate this all is. And I'm curious about ancillary material, to be honest. Damien says, to be fair, she's made it to the end, unlike with Doctor Who. Yeah, I still feel fair calling it, though. From what I've heard, the latest season of Doctor Who that had just come out like last year, I did not hear good things about it. So, feels like that's probably, I would have maintained that opinion, or it would have only have gotten worse. Let's see. Oh, April says, thanks, Max, for commissioning this. It was my first time through. Oh, that's cool. It's always fun to me when people like watch along or read along, because it's neat to think about how, because of what I'm doing, other people are trying out a new thing too, you know, because I don't know about y'all, but for me, getting me to start a piece of media just because you recommended it is so hard. And it's not to say that I resist people's like opinion thinking, oh, they can't be trusted. It's just, there's so much to consume. There are so many shows to watch. There's so many books to read. And sometimes you're just like, I don't even know who to listen to first. So having the show for people to direct me here, I want you to watch this and I'll pay you to watch it, honestly helps so much with that, because I just get exposed to something that if I ever got around to watching this show, God knows when it would be. It wasn't anywhere at the top of my list. And I liked the idea that maybe it's helping somebody else do that as well, pull the trigger on something they might otherwise not have bothered with or would have put off a long time. So yeah, I guess that's it. This felt actually like a pretty short episode of the show, and I'm wondering how completely on 22 minutes. It just felt short. That fight with Ed beating the ever-loving shit out of Father was brutal. That was really quite a lot. I really enjoyed it. And the animation in that sequence too. They go nuts with the sort of like jagged edges on everything. And it's just very effective. But yeah, all right. Well, guys, I will see you Tuesday with a new episode, and then Friday is the final episode. So 1 week from today, I will be wrapping on this series. And that is bonkers. And then right after that, I'm starting the next book in Cradle. So if you like this show, I really think you should read Cradle, because you will really like it. Just putting that out there. Damien says the shonen part of the series has finally kicked into overdrive. All right. Well, guys, thank you again. And I will see you on Tuesday. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.